Welcome. I'm happy to have you joining me. I'm your guide, Tree, and we have such a journey tonight. Please go ahead and like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications, all that good stuff. I greatly appreciate you doing that. And should be coming through with regular content on a weekly basis. I do some strange editing techniques here, but I am 0% AI and 100% against the use of AI in every way. If you think or know that I'm incorrect about something I say, please hop into the comments and let me know. I'm always open to some constructive criticism or non constructive criticism. If you just don't like me, please pop into the comments and let me know. So lately, I've noticed a lot of controversial stories popping up in the mainstream. It's as if there's something they want us to forget about. A certain list, perhaps. There's been a lot of talk about the shooting by an ICE agent. I think it's always tragic when life is lost, and I hope you'll agree. Then there's the Venezuela story. Innocent people died when we captured Maduro, and that's a fact. When I see these stories, my first thought is how much better I would have handled it. It really got me thinking, this is how they spend American tax dollars. NASA, who hasn't had a meaningful breakthrough in years, is set to get 24.4 billion in tax dollars. It's about 66 million a day. And what does NASA really give us for that? What do they spend that money on? What's it really worth? When you consider you could end hunger in the United States for around that same amount annually. I know a homeless guy who hangs around here, Gary. It's rough for him out here. Sure, he drinks maybe. He isn't perfect, but he doesn't deserve to go hungry. I was once a naughty tree myself back in the day. I've got some gnarly stories I could tell. Well, hell, the only way the situation could get worse is if our tax dollars made their way to the war machine. Defense contractors are old money. Speaking of which, the defense budget is set to just under $1 trillion this year in American hard-earned tax dollars. For context, that's 2.7 billion per day. To put that in perspective, estimates say you could end world hunger across the entire world for somewhere between 40 and 90 billion dollars annually. Which is to say, we could solve world hunger for an entire year with just 15 days worth of the defense budget. I know. NASA watches for solar flares and invents some things from time to time, but does it really warrant $66 million a day? And I know the defense budget, it goes to soldiers and they keep us safe. And my thanks goes out to those who lay their lives on the line. But again, 24 billion per day for military operations, knowing that American dollars is what leveled the Gaza Strip makes me sad. Knowing our tax dollars paid to kill 40 Venezuelans in the process of kidnapping their president makes me sad. Surely many of the 40 that were killed in Venezuela were armed and dangerous, and they committed a crime. The crime of protecting the president of Venezuela, the crime of doing their job. I don't know enough about Maduro to know if he was pure evil, and maybe he is. I just wonder, since he didn't threaten the United States or any NATO ally, how does this operation come out of the defense budget? There was nothing at stake to defend, unless you count the oil under their land. I guess this is why Donnie Trump calls it the Department of War, and maybe we should think of this as our war budget instead of our defense budget. And doesn't that just make you think? Doesn't it make you think, I didn't vote for this? And if we had gotten a vote, I would have voted not to try to police the world. I think most of us would at this point. Nope, not only did we not get a vote, Congress didn't even get a say. So why would the Mockingbird media promote these stories of your tax dollars going to scuffed operations? Is it because they think they can divide us? Maybe. But it could also be because they're so desperate to distract us from the 1 million new Epstein files that you probably didn't even hear about. I'm not being hyperbolic either. Literally 1 million new Epstein files that have not been released yet. But of course, that's not what's trending on social media or cable news. No, the top story is going to remain some tragedy. And as I said, it is a tragedy. These are real tragedies. And it's like Winston Churchill said, never let a good crisis go to waste. The more I think about it, the more I realize it must have something to do with dividing us. So if I'm right, and only certain stories are allowed to go viral or enter the mainstream, then you know the story was hand-picked. So why this particular woman getting shot by an ICE agent in Minneapolis? Why is that the story they chose? Because there's possibly two sides to this story. Some people could take the side of the ICE agent who's working a very dangerous job, and maybe you failed to watch the full video and you didn't see the agent put himself in front of that car intentionally, or how the agent was already clear of the car by the time he started shooting. So it is very conceivable that someone would be on the side of the ICE agent, especially someone who had served in the military or as a police officer previously. It seems they're just looking for stories to divide us. ICE recently kneed a homeless man in the face repeatedly. Not an illegal immigrant either, a citizen of the United States. And this was all caught on camera. That isn't the story they allow to go viral, because there's no other side to this story. There's no moral or conceivable way to side with the ICE agents with their knees on this man's back and going into his face repeatedly. So that story is not a good candidate for going mainstream or viral. If they do a good enough job keeping us distracted, then we won't think about the war machine that's always turning. The war machine exchanges wealth for life and life for wealth, and the elite think of us as expendable. And beyond that, even, they think of us as needing to be culled. They talk about culling the herds behind closed doors and sometimes right to our faces. There's a lecture by Bill Gates that's gone somewhat viral, and at that time he was talking about the human population and how it's grown to an unsustainable level, and how if human population continues to grow at this rate, the planet Earth would not be able to sustain life indefinitely. And so he continues to say that if he does a good enough job with vaccines, then he could bring that number down, pointing back to the population exponent in his equation. I'm not making this up. This is on YouTube. Was it a Freudian slip, or did he mean to say that he could bring human population down with vaccines if he did a good enough job? I don't know. But he definitely said it. Similarly to how Buzz Aldrin said that we never went to the moon. Whether he meant to say that or maybe he is just getting a bit old, he did say that in an interview called Zoe Interviews Buzz Aldrin. You can find it on YouTube. And in context, he says, we never went there and that's the way it was. It seems the formula is to flood and saturate the media with story after story, letting the truth in here and there, but never bringing it to the top. Whether it's a superficial distraction like a sports game or a cheating CEO at a sports game, or maybe a more substantial distraction like your tax dollars going to fund war and chaos throughout the world. These are real atrocities that spark real outrage. Of course, the story of someone getting shot by an ICE agent is a tragedy. The discussion needs to happen. We just need to be careful not to let it serve as a distraction. We need to keep talking about other important things, like the fact that they're killing all of us slowly. Remember when you go outside and you see those condensation trails behind airplanes that don't go away all day. Those are full of science experiments that take all day to slowly fall down to the ground onto you and or your neighbors. Don't forget that they are out here changing the definitions of what a vaccine even is, adding new, more fun ingredients. Bill Gates openly looking for ways and testing methods of distributing vaccines with mosquitoes. How can you give your consent to take a drug that's been administered to you by a mosquito? So, in conclusion, what I'm trying to tell you is Let's not make it about one particular ICE officer who admittedly was a little trigger happy. Let's talk about the fact that there's over 20,000 ICE agents operating in the continental United States right now. Let's not talk about how Maduro was a horrible president in particular. Let's talk about how every time we try to play dictator with other countries, those other countries always end up much worse off than they started. This is coming from a tree who's been there. I remember the Twin Towers. I learned from watching mainstream media that Islam was backwards and primitive and hateful and destructive, and that Western culture and Christianity was everything that is the opposite of that. And since then, I've heard many things to the contrary. There's obvious changes that need to be made in most Muslim countries, and the same can be said for most Western countries. Just like every person grows at their own speed, we should allow other countries to develop at their own speed. The idea that we should be injecting democracy has been satirized many times, though it seems, and I'm afraid, that that satire is lost on the elite. Thanks for the accompaniment on today's journey. I have so much more to impart on those who are willing to sit under an old tree for a while. The truth is contagious, and something worth going viral. If you agree, please like, subscribe, and hit the bell for more notifications. If you love nature, please comment your favorite type of tree and why. Share this video with a friend for extra good juju. Okay, talk soon, friend.